something as simple as talking to someone, just, at your job, getting to know your coworkers and talking to them about their own lives and their own past experiences, their own like relationships with their family and whatnot. You really do learn a lot from just living.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Studio Time. I am your host, Jay Stu, and today I don't have my co-host with me. Justin is a little busy today, but I do have a special guest, Mr. How do you say your last name?
Negretti.
Negretti?
Yeah.
Alexander Negretti, aka Frisky. What's going on, man? I never asked you that before. I never knew how to say your last name until just now.
You're totally good. I appreciate you for not trying to butcher it.
I wanted to say Negretti, but I wasn't sure, so I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you first. But welcome to Studio Time. This has been a long time coming. We've been discussing it for some months now, but we finally got around to getting you on. I'm very excited to get started today. But without any further delay, let's get right into it. So, tell me the origin story of Alex.
Hmm. Okay, so when let's see. So my film journey has been going on. My phone vibrating. I'm gonna throw that at the bed there. um,
It's
my
all good.
my film journey has been an ongoing thing throughout my entire life. But really, when I remember first appreciating film as an art form, I think was probably I was around the age of, I want to say, maybe three. I know I was just starting to learn to talk. Um, you know, I was born in 2003, and if you look at where films, specifically animation and family films, were at the time, we had stuff like Shrek, we had stuff like Nemo came out the year I was born. So,
Yeah.
I grew up in the age of digital, right? But I remember uh, one Christmas, my my parents showed me The Nightmare Before Christmas, and from then on out, um, everything changed. I remember knowing that there was, I couldn't quite explain it, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew there was something different about how the animation looked, how it moved, and whatnot, in The Nightmare Before Christmas, as opposed to stuff I was watching like Toy Story and stuff per se. But um, later on, I found out that the difference was that The Nightmare Before Christmas is stop motion and digital is done by the computer. And so, I remember my parents one year gifted me the collector's edition DVD, with all the special features and whatnot. And I probably have watched the special features and the making ofs more times than the actual movie itself. If I'm being honest, I just would watch them over and over and over again. Being at the age of 3 or 4, however old I was at the time, I was already thinking about things like, okay, if I wanted to make this movie for my own or make something like this or whatever, what do I have to do? What do I need to buy? Who do I need to talk to? Like, how does this all
Mhm.
work? And in fact, that was kind of my first exposure to film filmmaking in general, was stop motion. And I
Mhm.
think that's kind of, it's interesting because stop motion is, as we all know, it's whole other world, right? Like
Right.
that's a very different level of craftsmanship and whatnot. So,
Yeah.
um, being at the age I was when, being much smaller and already asking myself these questions and trying to find out these answers, um, I that's really kind of what got me into filmmaking, period, including live action, including other types of animation and whatnot. Um, and my family, I come from a very artsy background. My father well, not was, is a drummer. He in the
Hmm.
90s he was in um, quite a few bands out in the Palm Desert area. Specifically, the biggest band that was the most successful was called Ascalis, and they did pretty well. They opened up for a good number of well-known names and whatnot. They were also very that the whole desert scene of rock is very um, iconic, most specifically with bands like Queens of the Stone Age. They kind of came from that era's area slash era as well. So
Hmm.
my dad was good buddies with them and whatnot. So he was very well known in the music industry, specifically in Southern California. Um, my mother, she was a dance teacher, and before that, she was a ballerina. So
Hmm.
I feel like my parents' um, passion for the arts, I think, are kind of uh, what make me who I am, essentially. I think having that background helped establish the person I am today because even though filmmaking obviously is a different form of expression as opposed to dance, as opposed to music, it, as we all know, they're all connected. It's just,
Absolutely.
art is universal. It's just a different language, you know.
To go back to what you said about Nightmare Before Christmas, which ties into how you ended your origin story. Um, it's you know the movie is about an artist who doesn't want to create the same thing anymore, so he is journeying out into something that is new for him and fresh for him, which kind of resonated with me because I got into the filmmaking game late in life. I've only been doing this for like 2 years, not even that, like a year and some change. I've got the one short film that came out last last fall. I'm working on another one, but I've been writing um this all this past year, and one thing that resonated with me with Nightmare Before Christmas was that it was a guy that wanted to do something different, and I felt the very same way. I feel like anyone who is an artist or a creator, specifically filmmakers, Nightmare Before Christmas is definitely a movie for those types of people that want to be fulfilled, and specifically creatively fulfilled. So the fact that that was the movie that got you started on your journey makes complete sense.
It's really funny you say that because obviously, when I first watched the film, I obviously wasn't old enough to really understand um,
Mm-hmm.
that that was what the film was about. If anything, it was more about the visual eye candy. But as
Right.
an adult, looking at it now, and even like when would rewatch the film like high school as a yearly tradition, um, I really started to notice how genuinely deep the story actually is. I mean, it's all about finding your place in life,
Mm-hmm.
trying to think outside the box. And, on surface level, it's a family holiday film, but a little deeper than that, Jack is actually a very well written character. And I think that actually
Absolutely.
that goes all the way back to, because as we all know, the film is based off of a picture book slash poem that Tim Burton wrote and illustrated prior to the film. Um, but I think they do things to extend the runtime to make it a theatrical length film. But the story itself, I think, goes back to that, and it's genuinely uh, very impressive to me. Um, Tim Burton's the vision that he always has behind writing his characters, even the ones that are so simplistic. Um, and obviously, props, of course, like when it comes to the filmmaking, goes to Henry Selick because I feel like everyone knows Tim Burton, everyone forgets Henry Selick. You know what I mean? And that's a shame because
Yeah,
Henry
yeah.
Selick is a master. Um, but you know what I'm trying to say though. I mean, whether it be Batman, whether it be I don't know the characters in Frankenweenie, like Tim Burton, uh, the consistency of his films, I think, can be a little hit or miss sometimes, at least for me personally. But if there's one thing he always nails in every film, it's the writing of the characters. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I would say that the first half of his career was very consistent. You could, kind of take it or leave it with the second half. It's an acquired taste, but I mean,
Yeah.
Tim Burton is an acquired taste anyway. But I 100% agree with you. He absolutely nails the characters. Someone else who nails characters, James Gunn. Uh, Take the Guardians of the Galaxy for example. He took characters that no one really knew about, even hardcore comic book fans weren't too familiar with Guardians of the Galaxy, and now they're a household name. And it's not because of the spectacle or anything like that. It's because he he wrote these characters in such an empathetic way that resonates with what we go through every day. These characters are broken, and they have such a void in their development, and we're going on that journey with them. And a lot of people like to criticize superhero movies or Marvel movies, and what James Gunn has done, even though his movies aren't perfect, because Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is like the plot is all over the place, and sometimes the humor in his movies can overstay its welcome. But what he always does with every single movie, from Super to Slither to Suicide Squad, he always makes sure to write empathetic characters that come from a real place that real people can identify with. And I think that is paramount to good storytelling.
It's funny to bring up James Gunn because I definitely would say that's one of his biggest strengths as a filmmaker. And shame on me, I still have not seen Volume 3. I want to do it soon, and I know
Oh
I'm
man,
late to the
you
party, but I'm so
you'd like it.
excited,
You'd
and
like
it
it.
sounds like you bringing up this topic sounds like, I mean, I haven't been spoiled anything, but I mean, I know that it's very character heavy. That's the only thing I've been told. So I'm really looking forward to watching Volume 3.
Yeah, I had to watch it twice. It had to. I mean, I've always liked it, but it had to grow on me
It had to
a
really
little
click.
bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had to really, I had to really let it marinate. And after seeing it twice, I can say it's the best. It's the best of the three.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and you know what? It's funny you bring that up too because voice crack turned 15 years old there again for a second. Uh, so a thing about when it comes to rewatching films that I think it's just so interesting is um, you could see a film for the first time and borderline hate it. I mean, that's happened to me a lot of times where then
That happened to me with
by
Sinister.
what's Sinister?
Yeah,
Yeah, and then but sometimes um a second watch, you know, who knows? Like maybe you were too tired, maybe you were hungry, maybe you were fidgeting, whatever. I mean, I know I do with ADHD and whatnot. Um, but when it comes to,
I got it too.
yeah, but or even, you know what, it could also be a lot of times I found too is you just have to be at a certain place at a certain point in your life for the message to really uh, sit with you, I guess. Uh, I mean, I found that out. I mean, one trying to think one film for example, Mulholland Drive. Uh i the first time I watched that film, I didn't understand it. I didn't like it. I've never seen a film presented that way, and while I appreciated it, I guess at the time, I would say overall I did not enjoy the film. uh Come about 2 or 3 years later, being exposed to more of David Lynch, more of abstract storytelling and more art house cinema, it's in my top 5 films of all time.
Oh
And
wow.
I would have slapped you in the face had you said that to me the first time I watched it. But yeah, it's like that being said, it's so weird how a movie could not one thing about it could work, not one element of it could work, but then everything works the second time you watch it.
Absolutely. Like you said, there are so many variables that go into the viewing, one singular viewing of a movie, and people, forget that. And like you said, there you sometimes you have to be at a certain place in your life to receive what the movie is trying to give you. For example, Eternals. People hate that movie. For me, it is one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen. And I say
Wow.
that because I was in a place where I could receive what the movie was trying to say. Much like Nightmare Before Christmas, it was telling a story of belonging and trying to find your place amongst the rest of humanity. You had these uh, extraordinary characters, these characters that weren't even human, that were supposed to come down to Earth and help develop civilization, and along that 5,000 year journey, they a few of the characters fell in love with humanity, and not just the good things about humanity as a whole. And that resonated with me deeply because I was still trying to figure out who I was as a person. That's what people don't realize, is that because even you're gonna feel this way in like 10 years. You're 20, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you're gonna feel this way in like 10. You might think you know who you are right now, but you're most likely gonna be a completely different person when you're 30. I'm 33, and I'll be turning 34 in March, and I'm even a different person than I was 3 years ago. And one of the things that I love about movies, that I love about art, especially movies, is that they can help you realize who you are. Um, and it's just something special about uh, storytelling and characters, and just seeing other people go through certain journeys, and seeing that from an outside perspective. You're watching someone else go through their journey, and how that is like a juxtaposition to your own personal journey. But like you said, you have to be in a place to receive it.
Yeah.
And again, like the Eternals is one of my favorite movies of all time, because of that. I feel special about it because I feel like I'm one of few people who get it. Not saying that other people's opinions about the movie are invalid. If you don't like it, you don't like it. That's fine.
Right.
But I feel like there was a specific message that was trying to be conveyed, and I feel very special to be one of the people that get it.
That's awesome. And I mean, you know, when it comes to, you know, be if anything, I think what it comes down to, like, uh we say film and taking it in and whatnot is purely subjective, right? And I think a lot of what comes with that is a film excuse me, a film touching you personally, right? Like, for example, one of the most personal films in my life was mid 90s, directed by Jonah Hill. I think a lot of people, yeah, have you seen the film?
I haven't. It's on my watch list. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, no, great movie. I will say, so it's kind of funny because I think the only reason I view it as highly as I do is because it's a completely personal film for me. And it may not be for some other person. And they might,
Right.
view it again. I probably used the term already a couple times, but surface level, they might see it as a coming of age film and, and whatnot. But for me, uh, the kid in this film, played by Sonny Solik, every note was hitting. I could relate to this film so much because the movie ultimately, and this isn't really a spoiler, obviously I haven't watched it, so I'm not going to get into it too much, but it's about a kid
Hmm.
who obviously he's trying to fit in. He's doing stupid things so that people who at the time when you're that age, they seem cool and whatnot, you want to try to impress them, you want to fit in. And even though, you look on them now and like, none of the things they were doing were cool, like remotely at all. um
Mm-hmm.
at that point, when you're in eighth grade, ninth grade, whatever, that seems to be all that matters. At least it did for me, was, fitting in, because uh, I didn't know too many people when I transitioned from middle school to high school. I didn't know too many people going into high school, and I really didn't know anyone transitioning from elementary to middle, because I after elementary, I went back into public school. So that was a huge transition for me. So when kids
Yeah.
are being loud and, being obnoxious, like shouting penis, like doing stupid stuff, right? Like I was like, those must be the things I have to do to make friends and fit in. Obviously, I think we can all agree that's far from the case. But at the time, that really is how it felt, and it felt like the end of the world if you didn't make so and so think you're cool. But that's what I loved about the film, is because I went through that exactly, almost beat for beat, like scarily, borderline through that. So that's why the film for me is, I view it as a masterpiece, because I think you would have to have gone through that to really understand that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
As you said with
Yeah.
Eternals, like you had to be at a certain place at a certain time to really understand the vision behind what the filmmakers were trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes it feels like you have a superpower when you like we often, especially in this age of internet movie reviewers and letterbox and stuff like that, we we often think we know more than what we actually know, especially when it comes to art. But there's a special feeling that you get when you watch a movie and you get it, like you understand it. Like it's like it's this might sound corny, but it's like putting on a sweater or a coat that fits perfectly, and not only does it fit perfectly, but it's comforting. Like it's I can't really explain it any other way than that. But it feels there's a magic to knowing, or there's a magic to getting a film,
It's the right
if that
fit.
makes any
It's the right
sense.
fit.
Yeah, it's the right fit. So it's just, it's a wonderful feeling. But going into my next question for you, what are some uh films that influence your, not only your artistic taste, but like how you want to make films going forward? What are some filmmakers or some movies that influence your own techniques?
Well, I like the fact that the question is expanded, because I feel like it's easy to say, oh, what movies got you into movies, but it's not even just that. It's what movies do you want to, you know, say that you have drawn your influence from, right?
It's
Um,
definitely a two-part question.
so, yeah, obviously we already mentioned Nightmare. That was obviously the biggest one. And probably I'd say honestly that is still to this day the most important film in my life, because had I not watched that film, like, who knows like where I'd be, right? I could be doing something completely different. Um, I think, let's see, if we're going like along the timeline here, I guess. I know that this is another one that was kind of more of another gateway, not so much something I'd want to beat for beat recreate slash draw inspiration from majorly, but just because it's an important film in my life, would be The Crow. And that is actually, The Crow is actually my personal favorite comic book film of all time, personally speaking. My I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that, as I said, my my father was a musician, and music is a huge element in the film. Um,
Yeah.
and plus just the gothic atmosphere and nature and whatnot to it. I saw the movie way, way too young. I might say I was. It's definitely a very rated R film, and I probably saw it like way younger than I should have. Um, but I mean, that being said, that I think was this is gonna sound very corny, but I think that was the film where when I was smaller, I think I it made me not that the movie is like the most graphic movie in the world or anything when it comes to gore or nudity or anything like that, but like uh
Hmm.
more so it made me know that rated R films are not it's I don't know how to word it without sounding a little funky, but I think it made me really realize that R-rated films can be very artful. And I think that was the first movie that made me realize that. That because I think beforehand I viewed films with a lot of violence, with a lot of gore and whatnot as I don't want to say meaningless, but I thought they did it just to do it. And I think when I saw a film like The Crow, that definitely, it has violence, it has, themes of, gang relations and whatnot. Um, and even talking about like things like such as the afterlife and redemption and whatnot. These themes are very heavy themes that, at the time I was exposed to it. Um, I don't know. It's just hard to explain, but I think that was the first time that I realized there can be a story behind these elements. Now, as we all know, sometimes they do it just to do it, right? Like, I mean, that's definitely fair to say, but many times I think that's what made me love the Scorseses and the Tarantinos and whatnot later on. Um, so yeah, The Crow is a film that I saw smaller that definitely I don't know, that was a gateway film for sure. um, when it comes to where would we be next? Then probably I would say my favorite film of all time. Probably the next film to say that like this is a very important film like in my story. Would it's going to be a generic one, but 1994's Pulp Fiction, directed by Tarantino. Um, that film, I saw that film when I had to be in fifth or sixth grade. And that has been my favorite film ever since, and nothing has topped it and few have even come close. Um, I think that was yet another time that I think I was just so uh, fulfilled uh, with this is what cinema can be. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I think at the time, I mean, we were talking about obviously, and I'm not diminishing the MCU. I'm just talking about blockbusters in general. But a lot of kids my age, they were seeing the next MCU film that came out. They saw, I know Star Wars was getting ready to come out, and I was hyped as hell for the Force Awakens. I think most of us were. Um, but when it came to Pulp Fiction, I was like, this is every check box checked. You know what I mean? And that was the first time I was like, wow, I genuinely view cinema as high art. That was that was the point where I really felt that. I just felt like energy flowing through my fingertips after that film. Um, and yeah, and I think honestly, another thing with that too is that was the first time I saw a film that I think that's where I mean, not counting the Nightmare Before Christmas, but I think that's kind of where, when it came to my childhood, I think that's where I genuinely started to take it seriously somewhat. Um, I actually didn't really, uh, I don't know, give myself a green light until um, after high school was finished. I started actually my first semester of college. I was on the road to becoming a special ed teacher. And
Hmm.
while I think that's a wonderful position, still, of course, I definitely do. And I applaud anyone who is not only a teacher in this day and age, but let alone a special education teacher. I think we need more of them for sure.
Yeah, my wife
And
is a special education
oh
teacher.
wow, really? What a coincidence.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic job, and I think we need more of them for sure. Um, but when it came to me, I think there was a certain point where, I was I can't remember when or exactly what I was doing at the time, but I know somewhere along that first semester, I had a thought, and that thought was, one day I'll be coming home, you know, to my apartment after I move out of my parents' house and whatnot, and, have my job, and I have like that security, that knowing that you have a job to come back to and reliable income and whatnot. But then Friday would come along, and then I'd throw on a film, and I would be watching it and admiring the filmmaking and whatnot and saying that could be
Hmm.
me. I
Yeah.
would be saying that could be me. And then I just heard a little voice say, well, then don't let that happen. And from then on, and there were a few other kind of stories that really, uh, I don't know, set things forward. But I remember that being one of the very first times where I was like, this is what I want to do. Now, granted, that wasn't that long ago. That was only about we're going on nearly about 2 years ago now. So we're not talking about a super long time ago or anything. But that being said, that was when I first really knew. So I know we got a little sidetracked, by the way. So I'm sorry
No,
about
you
kind of
good.
going a different direction, but
No, you good. You good. Well, you and I are we on the same page. Like for me, like I said, two years ago was when I was like, I this is what I want to do, and I spent all of my 20s trying to figure out what I really wanted to do. For a time, I thought that I wanted to be a musician, which is a coincidence because your dad's a musician. You got a very artistic family, and I moved down here to Atlanta in order to pursue a music career, and it, like maybe a year and a half after I moved down here. I've been down here 4 years now, but maybe a year and a half after the big move, I realized that's not really what I want to do, and I didn't know what I really wanted to do. Um, and it wasn't until I started my YouTube channel, because it was a physical media channel, and that was cool. I liked doing it, but after a while, it wasn't as fulfilling as I thought it would be. Um, because I realized within the physical media community, this is probably obvious, but it's more about the disc than it is the movie, and that kind of, I don't say it bothered me, but it just didn't sit right with me. So I was like, maybe this is not what I want my channel to be and what I want to do going forward. I want to talk about the movie. Like I want to get really deep in there, and I started studying filmmaking, and I was like, this is it. The bug bit me. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And the only thing I regret is that it took me 31 years to figure it out. But yeah, the bug bit me. So me and you, like we're on the same page. We're pretty much at the same stage in our journey. I've got the one short film. I know you just did Laugh at Me about a month ago. So let's talk about that. That was an interesting one. I've watched it twice now. I watched it
wow.
when it first premiered, and I watched it a couple of days ago to prepare for this, and that was definitely interesting. I definitely enjoyed it. So, what made you want to tell that type of story?
Well, I spoke about it a little in my director's statement, but I think, you know, if we're talking about influences, because I think that's kind of the first thing to get out of the way. Um, Martin Scorsese's King of Comedy and Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. Those are the two films that I think heavily inspired the type of story I wanted to tell. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the only thing, let's see, let's backtrack a little bit. So when it came to this class, the way this class was set up was it was a three-stage workshop course. You had we started late, so we also ended late. We didn't start until late February, and from February to I want to say probably late March. From phase one was pre-production. That was figuring out what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it, and we were there 2 nights a week, 4 hour class. So we had plenty of time, and of course, time in between to brew ideas. So we had a lot of time to figure out, everything there was that we needed to figure out. Um, then we shot our films all during the month of April. We were sent into teams of three or four or whatnot, and one weekend we'd be at this guy's house shooting his film, and another weekend we'd be at the other guy's house. So that's how the month of April was spent. The majority of May, uh, the campus was closed for summer break, so we had to wait to return, and then late May throughout June. Uh, that was post. That's when obviously we did all of our not only did we do all of our post production stuff, but the most exciting part was towards the end getting to see everyone else's films. Um, and so that's kind of the layout of the course. Um, as I was writing the script for the film, I this is gonna sound like the most generic thing you've ever heard when it comes to writing, but I really did let the story uh, take me on its own because I had an idea of kind of what was essentially going to somewhat happen. I knew that I was going to have a comedian of some sort. I knew that he was going to have an act that wasn't deemed as very good by his audience. But aside from that and wanting to make somewhat of a maybe not a straightforward horror film, but maybe horror-esque, aside from that, I wasn't really sure about anything else besides that. And that's a very general slash soft idea, if you can agree.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm writing this out, I thought to myself, well, I know kind of going through the writing process a little bit, so I had my character, I had my idea. Then I started going about the details. Then kind of off to the side as I was writing the script, I was writing notes. Okay, I want a certain transition here. I want a certain, shot to look like this. Um, and obviously that stuff, as you know, you don't really need to worry about that till a little later. It's not as much of a priority as like actually getting the story down in a screenplay. But those were ideas that I just could not contain. I had to get those out. I had to, because I knew if I didn't, I would forget, and that's happened a lot.
Right.
So I was like, I have to write this down, with a pen. I have to, everyone's got their little thing they got to do. I have to use like have it in ink, right? Um, I'm going along, and I think the hardest part about writing the film, that had to be the ending. I would say would be the hardest part. And I'm going to let you in on a little something. The ending that you actually see in the short film is not only the way that uh, that is not only different from the way that it ends in the screenplay. That's actually different than what was actually shot. Um, and going into the story of that, so in the original screenplay, um, our our main character actually shoots himself. And if you look at the dresser, there's like this yellow bag with polka dots on it hanging from
Yeah.
one of the drawer knobs. Inside there's actually a prop gun that we rented from the school. We had a revolver in there, and
Oh wow.
what happens is, he pulls it out, he plays around with it for a little. This is giving a soft idea of what exactly happened, but he's playing around with it. He, does some antics, and then it cuts to black, year gunshot, and then the credits roll. And that's actually not only originally how it was written, that's actually what we did film. The problem was we shot this film on a 16 millimeter Bolex. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm not exactly sure where it went wrong because we had all of our footage up until that point, but somewhere along the reel uh where we shot the ending, because we actually shot the ending first. My shoot was split into 2 nights. The stuff you see in the dressing room was the first night. The second night, with the actual comedy club sequence, that was filmed second. But
Okay.
anyway, back to my point. So maybe it was because we shot the ending on the first reel. Maybe that had something to do with it because, well, mind you, my shoot probably went the smoothest out of my entire group, mostly because we by that time we kind of knew what we were doing a little bit. That was the first time any of us shot on film. Um, so, experience definitely helped, even just a short 3 weeks of it. Um, but
Hmm.
anyway, by the time we got to mine, it went the smoothest, except for the fact that I'm not exactly sure what happened, but at the end of the reel, all of a sudden it must have had something to do with light exposure, maybe some, dirt got in there or whatnot, or I'm not sure. But the end of that reel is completely blown out in white. Um, and to this day, I still couldn't tell you. Um, but I was a little heartbroken because everything except for the ending made it in. So that at the
Hmm.
time I was so heartbroken because I loved my ending. That was the hardest thing to come up with. Probably the thing I sat on the most trying to figure out, and that was the only thing that didn't make it in. So I was like, "Come on, man!" And we did. I tried to get some reshoots to happen, but scheduling wasn't working, like between my actor and whatnot. So finally, I had to say, you know what? I hate the phrase uh, settle because it's just, or the word settle, because it's just something as an artist, I think you can agree you don't want to do it. Like you don't want to do
No,
it.
no.
Settling for less means it's going to be something that wasn't your vision, and that just alone is the most frustrating sounding thing to say out loud. Um, but what at first was really uh, quite a nuisance actually ended up being a great blessing, because even though I will say maybe on paper it's a little more exciting or whatnot that he shoots himself, I think, I had to obviously improv and, fool around with some post stuff, whatnot with editing, to figure out what I was going to do exactly for this ending. And what I did settle on, the way it does end, I was like, you know what? I think I might actually prefer this a little more to the way it was intended to be. Um,
Hmm.
because I don't know, the presentation of it is just, not, again, not what I set out to do, but had my reel, come out perfect, this this sort of ambiguous ending, if you will, would have never happened. And here's the fun fact. So uh what you see during the credits of the film is actually the part of the film that was blown out. So because that's where that is the part of the film where we did film him, obviously shooting himself. So my ending is still kind of in there. It's still snuck in, but only a select few actually know what they're looking at, I guess. There's honestly no way to tell, but rather than just having like a blank colored background, I was like, why not? Because we spent so long doing it, we might as well have something kind of different at the end.
That, yeah, that's awesome. That's really interesting to know. Going back to what you said about, the word settle, Steven Spielberg doesn't watch his own films because he said all he will see is the compromises that he made, which is, perfectly understandable. Um, so even I, have have a little bit of a hard time watching my short film Recovery, because there's a whole scene that was supposed to be in the middle of it that got lost, but that did make for a better short film, because it kind of streamlined it and compacted, because that scene wasn't in there. And it made for a better paced story, but there was a scare in there that I really wanted to be in there. But yeah, so it's perfectly understandable why why you felt that way. You worked so hard on coming up with that ending, and to for it to not be useful is very frustrating. But that's the thing that comes with filmmaking, especially being the director. Being a director is just another word, for problem solver. You're gonna have to solve some problems early in the process, in the middle in the process, and right before your film premieres. So it just comes with the territory. So we
I
we
think
knew what we were
the
getting ourselves into.
I think the phrase like making the best of it really is true because obviously that being said, if you're making the best of something, you're the way I see it, like say you got it might be a funny analogy, but say you know uh you're trying to build a house, you're out in the wilderness, but you don't have that many trees. Whereas uh, you're not going to be able to build a mansion out of like very limited trees, but you'll be able to build something. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
And it may not be what you want, always, but a lot of times you'll actually surprise yourself, and other people will, not having known that, they'll totally see it like another way. Like something I actually found out while uh, after the fact that the film was all done. I definitely the bit where he's not exactly getting a reaction out of his audience. Um,
Yeah,
During that bit, I definitely uh, the way it's presented and edited and whatnot was definitely the idea from literally the beginning when I was writing out how it was going to play out. But what I didn't know is or what I wasn't expecting was for how many people to say they actually found something like creepily slash darkly funny about it. And I was like,
yeah.
I didn't even know that I could write dark comedy, and that's something I totally, found out after the fact. And I was like, wow, that
So that's
actually kind
it.
of
It
surprised
it
me.
wasn't a dark comedy.
Well, it definitely, it, there's segments of it that were, I think, supposed to be, maybe more on the goofy side, but to make someone out loud laugh, like there was a girl that said she totally like busted up laughing at the scene where they're not giving a reaction. And
I did too.
I was like, I was like, wow, that actually surprises me in a really good way. Like, so that's something I found out about myself and about writing. I did not know that I could do that, and now this only gives me more to work on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. That's actually really surprising. I thought it was intended to be a dark comedy, and hearing you say that you had intended that, you didn't even know you could do that, is amazing. You've just unlocked a superpower. So
I guess so.
but that's awesome, man. I'm definitely gonna leave the link to that in the description and the show notes when I upload this. But before we get into draft time, I do have one more thing to ask you, and that is how do you come up with new ideas? How do you stay creatively fresh?
Hmm. So let's see. So it kind of goes two ways. So coming up with new ideas, um, that's something that it's kind of always happening. I always have so many thoughts going through my head. And I think a lot of times, like, past, just walking through this journey that we call life, you meet so many people, you understand so much about the world just by it's something as simple as talking to someone, just, at your job, getting to know your coworkers and talking to them about their own lives and their own past experiences, their own like relationships with their family and whatnot. You really do learn a lot from just living. I use
Yes.
the example of talking to your coworkers as a small thing, but I'm just saying in general, just walking through life, you really do over time, like just learn so much about the world. And if you open your ears and eyes to be really receptive of it, you will only find it times three if you allow it to come in. You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
allow yourself to I don't know, be open to these different uh, lifestyles people have, or how certain minds think. I think one of my favorite things, just I don't know, about learning about the world, I guess, is understanding different people's psychology. That's my favorite thing when it
Yeah.
comes to
Mine too.
after you're right after a film is done. um I almost get mad if there's not special even something light, special feature wise about talking to the director, or maybe the writer if that's available. I just want to understand how they think. Like, I just want to understand, like, you know what did you go through to make you want to, like, tell this story, or you know, like, one example in specific, Ari Aster, all of his crew, from what I've heard, like specifically Tony Collette with Hereditary, everyone says that he's the most like sweet, bubbly lollipop of a guy, and it's like, but he's made some really dark and traumatic films, so it's like I
Yeah.
want to understand where that comes from. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, how is it? Do you think? How do you wake up in the morning? Like, how do you put your shoes on? Those are the things that really interest me. Um, so I don't know, just the abundance of, uh, you know, putting one foot in front of the other, and getting all of these uh, elements uh, come in, are just this accumulation of it is very overwhelming. But that's ultimately where my ideas come from. Um, though it can be a little overwhelming at times because there's a lot to go off of. Um, that is how I think. But when it comes to being when it comes to the more creativity side of things, um, I think for me, how do I stay fresh? How do I stay hydrated? Um, it's going to be the most like generic answer of generic answers once again. But for me, really, it's just by watching films. I love what Paul Thomas Anderson has to say about learning to be a filmmaker. He, if anything, is very anti film school, funny enough, from what I've heard. And he said everything that he's ever learned about filmmaking was from watching movies, and I think that's absolutely true. Like
Mm-hmm.
like I said with Pulp Fiction, for example, earlier on in my life, I learned how to write a good story with the films of David Lynch, who is my favorite filmmaker of all time. I learned so much about uh, symbolism and how you can tell a whole story just through an artifact. And most specifically with abstract storytelling, I learned from him, like, how much sound and editing really does play into the presentation of a film, and how something like coming from him is so uniquely different than, I don't know, say a slapstick comedy, you know? So ultimately, again, I know it's not the most exciting answer in the world, but watching movies for me is like my therapy. You know what I mean? Like, it really truly
I
is.
know exactly what you mean. Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. For me, obviously watching movies. And also writing things down. I started doing a creative journal, and I write in it throughout the day. Sometimes I'll write one thing, sometimes I'll write 10 things, but whatever idea is remotely interesting, I'll write it down. Most of them are pretty terrible, but the ones that are actually pretty good, I'll find a nugget in there, and I'll put it to the side and try to expand on it later. And some of those ideas have turned into short film scripts. Others have made their way to File 13. um, so it's just for me, it's just like you said, the creative juices are always flowing. But for someone like you and I who has ADHD, I have to compartmentalize, because if I don't, it's just going to be like unraveling a ball of string, or unraveling your favorite headphones. It's just gonna be
A mess.
complete
Yeah.
chaos. So I gotta compartmentalize. So, but as far as watching movies, I'm with you. And what I've been doing lately, um, because I'm not in film school. I'm just learning on my own. I've been watching films with purpose. So not watching films with purpose, but I've been purposely watching films for a specific reason.
Yeah.
So my short film Recovery, the objective for that was to establish tone. I wasn't necessarily trying to make a compelling ending or make it super scary. I wanted to have a good ending, and I wanted it to be scary because it's a horror movie. But my main objective was, can I establish a specific tone? And
Right.
I think I did pretty well. So my next short film will be about, or will the objective for that will be camera movement. How can I move the camera to better serve the story?
Right.
Um, so I've been studying, my favorite directors and movies that have some great cinematographers and lighting. So that, like, my next short film is gonna be heavily inspired by David Fincher as far as
Oh,
how it's
awesome.
going to look. Yeah. So like my last film was heavily inspired by James Wan.
One thing I liked about you saying, uh, nuggets in an abundance of things you don't like a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
when I went to I know I sent pictures a long time ago, but when I went to the horror convention, Mad Monster, and I wanted to meet Damien Leone, and he was there, and I watched them do a Q&A panel and stuff. That was a lot of fun, but sadly, I don't know what he did, where I think he went to go eat or something. He never returned to his booth, sadly. But I did meet David Howard Thornton, Art the Clown, and I asked him. I said, I'm a young person trying to get into this industry. For I know you're an actor. I want to be a filmmaker, but it's adjacent. And I asked, do you have any
Right.
advice about film, or what it means to choose this to be your life, like, in the slightest? And he said, the thing I remember him telling me that really has stuck with me, the detail he said, ultimately he said stick with it, but like whatever that might be. But the example he used was, he said, I waited tables for 13 years before I got my big break, and I probably got one yes for every 100 no's. So when you
Mm-hmm.
said that detail about, a nugget, like something so small in an abundance of, something you're not a fan of, that struck a core memory with me for sure.
I'm glad that could, that struck that chord, and you know piggybacking off of that, and going back to my last episode, which was about you know uh being creatively consistent. You got to remember that it's not, it's gonna sound corny, but it's about the journey. It's about learning, and you got to realize that most of the journey is gonna suck.
Yeah.
But you're not necessarily doing it for well, at least I would hope that, you know, most of us are not necessarily doing it for the
The
success
bumps.
of it. Like,
Oh,
you know, we're no, we're doing it because we love the journey and all of its faults. You know, this is, you know, creating and writing and filmmaking, doing my YouTube channel. Like, this is very creatively fulfilling for me. And, you know, not all of my videos are winners. Like, I had recently started my YouTube channel over, because uh the you know I when I had rebranded my channel, the algorithm was kind of confused about what my channel was about. So I was like, you know, let me just start over. And, you know, it's a, you know, it's a slow start, but I'm not doing it for the numbers
right.
necessarily. I'm doing it because I enjoy it, and I personally just wanted to start over on a clean slate. But, you know, not every video is going to be a winner. Not every short film is going to be a winner. Just because you're really excited about something doesn't mean everybody's going to feel the same way you feel about it. You're gonna, like you said, you're gonna get 100 no's before you get that yes. And, you know, you being being in this art form, you're gonna have to, you know, you're gonna have to get some tough skin and remember why you're doing it. You're doing it for the love of doing it, and not, you know, necessarily the outcome of of success,
It's
rather.
like
So
we would all love to make a masterpiece, but more specifically, like that's kind of more of a want. The reason why I need to express myself through film is because I genuinely cannot see myself doing anything else in this life.
hmm yeah, like I said, I've tried and failed many things, and this is the one thing that felt 100%, 200% right. And I'm not, I can't do anything else but this. Like, I have many other interests, and there are things that I'm able to do, but all of those things led to this.
Right.
So I'm very excited about what the journey has in store for me. So,
Hell yeah.
but yeah, moving on into the last segment, which is draft time. Very excited about this segment. Like I said, when I was talking about David Fincher, it was a perfect segue into what tonight's topic is, and that is Fincher film cast. So basically, for those of you that are not familiar, we have a category. The guest and the host will pick five things from that category, and whatever is picked cannot be picked again. It cannot be duplicated. It is, you know, taken off the draft board or whatever. And when this was a live stream, we used to have the chat vote, but, you know, I would only have like four people watching it, so that was kind of pointless. So now we're just, you know, we're just doing it just for the love of doing it. So as a first time guest, you will get to go first. There are 5 rounds, so you will pick 5 actors, and we'll alternate, 1, 1, 2, 2. And once we get to 5, we will compare lists, and that will be that. So, uh, Mr. Negretti, you are on the clock.
All right. So I just list out five right now.
You just one at a time. So
Oh,
we're
one
gonna
at a
you do
time.
one and I do one. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
alternate.
I will ask, am I allowed to use someone who's already been in a David Fincher film?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to go for Ben Affleck, first of all.
Oh man, you took my number one pick.
Are you
It's all good.
serious? Because
It's all good.
we
It's
said
all
this
good.
before, but I have to say, Gone Girl, it's a film that I respect more than I love, but I have to
I
say,
could say the same thing.
my favorite element of that film is Ben Affleck's performance. I genuinely think it's one of his best.
Yeah, I agree with Gone Girl. And it's not even on David Fincher. It's the story itself, because he adapted it from a book. And
Right.
what frustrates me about the movie, even though it's a fantastic movie, is the end. And without getting too spoilery, it kind of made me feel like, what's the point?
Right.
But I do agree that that is one of Ben Affleck's best performances. He is so uh unlikable. I don't really like using that word, but for lack of a better word, he's so unlikable, but you there's still a part of you that kind of wants him to succeed in this, because it's like, man, he's really going through it right now. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's one of his best performances. So your first pick was Ben Affleck. I guess I'm gonna go with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. Jake Gyllenhaal is one of my favorite actors. He's one of the most versatile actors in Hollywood right now. He can do anything.
Right. Seriously. Yeah.
um, yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Jake Gyllenhaal. He's in one of my favorite movies, which is Zodiac.
Oh,
I
nice.
adore that movie. So yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Stacked. At least as far as the first. I mean, the whole movie is really, but that film, like the main three leads. Oh,
Whew,
oh my
phenomenal,
gosh. And
phenomenal.
all who knew all three of them would later be in the MCU as well.
Right, right. You got Mysterio, Iron Man, and Hulk all in the same movie. So,
Exactly.
uh, round two, you're on the clock.
All right. My number two, I'm gonna pull one out of the hat here. This is
Okay.
someone who has, as far as the acting world goes, has really piqued my interest lately. Not because I have seen an incredible amount from him, not even his most acclaimed work, but just hearing him talk about film in YouTube videos and interviews, I really would be curious to see what he could bring to the table. Um, and I am talking about Bill Hader. Um, and I and I say him because just listening to him talk about film and just again like the way he not only approaches not that I find Fincher films like at least most of them I should say to be comedies or whatnot, but just the way he takes his comedy so seriously. And this is a big reason I'm very excited to check out Barry in specific. The way he so seriously approaches his comedy, I would be very curious to see what he could uh, do in a serious or dramatic role if he views it in the same way and executes it in the same fashion.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I have nothing to add. I'm just gonna echo what you said. Um, for me, let's see, round two, I'm gonna go with Bill Skarsgård.
Nice.
Um, because he is another transformative young actor, even more so than Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal, I think he has the experience under his belt. He can just do a little bit more. But as far as like turning themselves into a completely different person, I think Bill Skarsgård has it. So yeah, I would love to see him, and I would love to see him work with David Fincher in a really dark like horror movie, because that's what
Mhm.
I'm thinking of right now. I'm thinking of a horror movie
Yeah, this
in my
so
head.
far
So
is going in the direction of a horror film for sure.
yeah.
All right.
Round three.
Okay, round three. So to add a little diversity in here, I think I'm going to go for a female actress. Um, and
Hmm.
I am going to bring into or bring in the light someone who, man, she knows how to delight me. She knows how to piss me off. So she has all the range of emotions. And I feel like if she was in a David Fincher film, I feel as though she would be the villain. And I'm talking about Nicole Kidman.
Whew, I'm so glad you didn't pick my pick because I thought I knew where this was going, but I'm so glad you didn't pick my pick. But that's a great pick though. Nicole Kidman, she would definitely be a villain in
For
the
sure.
movie. Yeah, Nicole Kidman, Ben Affleck, Bill Hader. Yeah, that would be that's a great cast so far. Um, I'm also gonna go with an actress, and I was gonna wait to pick this person, but this actor, I don't want you to get her, so I'm going to pick her, and that is Tilda Swinton,
Oh,
another
nice. That's a good one.
transformative actor. Yeah.
That's a very good pick. Um, okay, let's see. All right, number four we're on. I
Yes.
I am going to pick. I feel like aside from the obvious work that he's done, this is another person who's mostly, when it comes to their headline name, is mostly known for television, similar to Bill Hader. But this guy, other than what's going to obviously be his most known work, I feel like similar to Bill Hader, he you don't really see him in lead roles that much, to be honest. It's mostly supporting
Hmm.
roles, but I want to see him. And I mean, technically, we would be in the supporting cast at this point, obviously. But
Right.
I would want to see more screen time, is what I'm trying to say. And I am
Right.
talking about Bryan Cranston.
Ooh, good choice. That's a fantastic choice.
Thank you.
Now, uh would he be a hero or villain?
I I want to say he would be. I almost feel like he kind of is. He always plays the dad role, so I almost feel like he would be Nicole Kidman's father if Kidman is the villain in my film. But I feel like
Hmm.
while he may not straight up be a villain, like he proposes a threat to the hero per se. I feel like his something he's done in the past would make Nicole Kidman be this way somehow, some way. I'm not sure the details, but I feel like he would have something to do with it, and he is the reason why she's like this.
Yeah, yeah. For me, my villain would be well, I would have the two Bill Skarsgård and Tilda Swinton would be the two villains. I think Tilda Swinton would be the major villain, and Bill Skarsgård would kind of be up under her. Um, which leads me to my next pick. I would want, like you, to have someone who would have history with the villain, and that would be Jeffrey Wright.
Oh wow, okay. I did
Yeah,
not see that one coming. That's good.
yeah, one of my favorite actors. Like I'm picking a lot of versatile actors because he's another transformative actor that can really become another person.
Hmm.
But I feel like in this particular movie, he would have some history with Tilda Swinton. So Jake Gyllenhaal would have to enlist the help of Jeffrey Wright to take down Tilda Swinton and Bill Skarsgård.
Okay. That's a really good role for him to play. That would be very
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so number five. I know I've mostly been doing big names, but I mean David Fincher always has big names in his films, so that's
Mm-hmm.
totally okay. So my number five, he's a guy that I was at first gonna say someone else, but I was like, you know what? This guy in particular, he's been on my mind a lot as far as his performances go, and I want to see. I know this somehow keeps going into the direction of their work in television for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
but I have not seen his work in television that's acclaimed or whatnot. though I want to. And I'm talking about Matthew McConaughey. I'm not
Whoo!
100% sure what the role would be. It sounds like it would probably be a hero. Like I feel like, or at least something somewhat like it. I feel like
Yeah,
he might be like, I don't know, the chief of police, chief detective, or something like that. I feel like. But
yeah.
speaking of detective, that's kind of what I was referencing. Was I've heard. I don't know too much about the later seasons because I know they kind of go in their own direction. Every season does, kind of like an American Horror Story kind of deal. But
Mm-hmm.
I have heard nothing but True Detective, the first season being like one of the best seasons of TV of all time, and I
Yeah, same.
really want to check it out.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's really hard for me to watch TV shows because I have commitment issues with TV shows, so
Same
it's really
here.
hard for me to finish them. But yeah, I'm with you. I definitely want to check that out because of season one and Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. I definitely want to check that out. Um, for my last pick, I'm gonna go with another female actor. This person would be the wife to Jeffrey Wright, and that would be Viola Davis.
Damn, that's good. Now she always gives a powerhouse of a performance no matter what it is. So it's
Absolutely,
like
absolutely.
that was a good choice. Um I haven't seen Fences, but oh my gosh, I want
Ooh, you
to.
gotta see
I want
Fences.
to. I want
You
to.
gotta see Fences.
I've heard that
Yeah,
one is
Fences.
so good.
It's so good, and that's the role that made me want to pick her for this particular movie. I would like her to play that kind of role to Jeffrey Wright's character, a woman who is very supportive of her husband, even though he may not always make the right decision. So I definitely would love to have Viola Davis and Jeffrey Wright in a David Fincher movie. So
Yeah, it's funny that you say that about her giving her support or whatnot, because the thing is with her, I mean, at least from what I have witnessed of her work and whatnot, she doesn't play a wimpy character like ever. Like,
no,
no.
no.
It doesn't happen.
Even yeah, even in Fences, I wouldn't necessarily like she's not wimpy. She's definitely on the softer side of what she has normally played, but she's a very strong uh self assured character. She's
Yeah,
still very confident in herself, even though it's a little bit further on the spectrum than what she's normally played. So yeah.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, that wraps it up for this draft time. The Fincher film cast for Fritzky. We have Ben Affleck, Bill Hader, Nicole Kidman, Bryan Cranston, and Matthew McConaughey. That's those are some fantastic picks. Uh, and for me, I've got Jake Gyllenhaal, Bill Skarsgård, Tilda Swinton, Jeffrey Wright, and Viola Davis. Um, I think both of ours would be kind of like a yours is more crime, right?
It sounds probably that would be more the direction. Yeah.
Yeah, and mine would be a little bit more horror. So yeah, we I think we both got some great picks. Let us know down in the comments, or if you're listening to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, let us know in the review what you think about our picks. But once again, thank you for joining me tonight for this episode. I'm so glad that we finally got to do this and I got to pick your brain about some things. I hope that we can do it again soon. Hopefully my co-host will be able to join us next time. But is there any last remarks, anything new that you have upcoming? If you want to tell people where they can find you.
Um, let's see. Well, I mean, as far as you can find me, probably the thing I would promote the most would obviously be my YouTube channel, Fritzky. Um, but as far as something new goes, I can say two things. One is something that will come sooner than later, and then we'll talk about the other one. Um, Something that's coming a little sooner. I will say I have had an idea brewing. Um, the plans are still loose, but uh, it's serious enough to where I have called up some people and for uh, when it comes to for some acting. Uh, and I've already said, hey, I have a character that I think you would be good to play. That's about as far as we've gone, I guess, is kind of just so we haven't even really had a first draft yet, but there is something I am currently working on. And another thing, I think just a vision I think I would like to share. This is pretty recent, like about a month recent, but I I think one thing I would like to do, and I would maybe hopefully try to do it somewhat earlier on too, in my filmmaking journey. I want to direct a stop motion animated film. Obviously, we talked for a long time earlier on, um, for quite a bit about what stop motion and animation in general means to me. But this is what got me into film and filmmaking. Including live action, including whatever. It comes down to stop motion being my gateway drug. And I just feel like because I owe stop motions like as a medium so much, I want to make a stop motion animated film before I die, and a dang good one too. Um, I know I recently something that reaffirmed it for me is we rewatched Fantastic Mr. Fox, which is a film that I actually it came out when I was actually I was 5 years old when the film came out. I was at a perfect age to see it, but we for some reason my family never showed it to me. We just never they just never got around to it or whatever. So I watched it a lot later, but it what's the word? It re reevaluated made me reevaluate myself, and I was like this is how and why I fell in love with the in with film in the first place was because of things like this, and now it's one of my favorite films and my favorite Wes Anderson film. But anyway, kind of going off a little astray there, but um ultimately I think I want to make a stop motion animated film uh in my filmmaking journey. Hopefully sooner, if not later, but at some point for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I hope you get to make that film sooner. The way you talked about Nightmare Before Christmas and Fantastic Mr. Fox. I think you got something really special there. So I hope you get to make that pretty soon. But once again, thank you for joining me tonight. It was great, and I hope that we can do this again. But if you guys want to write a review for the podcast, please do so. It helps the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. I would greatly appreciate it. The YouTube algorithm would love that, so it can show this video to people who would also love it. So please do that for me. But we're gonna head out on this one. So in the meantime, we're gonna watch some more movies.
Thanks for having me, John.